Happy New Year. I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. A new year brings new health concerns for 2025 as measles makes an unfortunate comeback. Plus, FBI calling a deadly New Year's incident in New Orleans an act of terrorism and say a driver acted alone when he drove into a crowd. And hundreds plunge into Lake Ontario to mark the beginning of the new year with a polar dip tradition.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us for our first newscast of 2025. As we enter the new year, measles making a comeback in 2025 is among the top health concerns for Canada's Chief Public Health Officer. Dr. Theresa Tam says she's closely monitoring the virus that was eliminated in this country more than 2 decades ago, but has made an accelerated resurgence in 2024.
We just experienced quite a large outbreak that's centered around New Brunswick and Ontario in a unvaccinated community. So this is such an infectious virus, it will seek out all the unvaccinated people. And right now it hasn't gone beyond the unvaccinated communities in relation to that introduction, but the risk is always there. The other tragic event that happened in the past year is we experienced a death in a child with measles in Ontario, which we have not seen for a very long time. And 20 cases have been hospitalized. So it's just a reminder to parents who haven't experienced measles that it's because of the very effective vaccines that's protecting us. And it is a serious illness.
It was one of the top Canadian weather stories in 2024, but Jasper residents and officials are now feeling hopeful, although anxious, as the community heads into 2025 after a wildfire destroyed a third of the town last summer. The rebuilding process is just getting underway, and with debris still being removed and a massive provincial governmental housing project expected to be complete before spring, the community is expecting significant changes over the next year.
As you might say, failure is not an option for anybody. We have to recover. The town has to be, to the extent we can make it whole again, let it thrive again socially and economically. We need to get to a position where there is housing for the labor force that we need to regenerate our visitor economy. There is just no question that that is the single most significant challenge that we face.
It's all just stuff. No one can take away from me the fact that I owned it, had memories. Those are still there. It doesn't change anything. So I'm looking at it as a reset, and I'm allowed to have that sad moment.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau returns from vacation this week, and many Canadians are waiting to hear what his future holds. Calls for him to step down as a Liberal leader have been growing ever since Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland announced her resignation. If Trudeau does resign, it would trigger a Liberal leadership race. Meanwhile, the Conservatives, Bloc Québécois, and NDP have all said they're ready to bring down the Liberal government through a non-confidence vote. Well, a new year usually means new goals, but sometimes old traditions. And this year, on January 1st, hundreds of people jumped into Lake Ontario to mark the beginning of the new year as part of the polar dip tradition. At least 750 people plunged into the cold lake at Coronation Park in Oakville, Ontario, just west of Toronto.
3, 2, 1.
The Courage Polar Bear Dip has been an amazing event here in Oakville. It's been going for more than 40 years. For 25 of those years, they've been partnered with World Vision. So people are doing this crazy stunt, going in the water, but they're doing it and they are making a difference in the lives of vulnerable girls and boys in Africa, this year in Congo and in Zambia. And since we started the partnership, we've raised more than $2.5 million for clean water initiatives for children.
Well, it was a tragic start to the new year south of the border when at least 15 people were killed and 30 others injured following what U.S. authorities say was a targeted attack during a New Year's Eve celebration. A man driving a pickup truck sped through a crowd of pedestrians in New Orleans' bustling French Quarter around 3:15 a.m. on January the 1st. U.S. President Joe Biden says the New Orleans attacker posted video beforehand indicating he was inspired by ISIS.
Our hearts are with the people of New Orleans after the despicable attack that occurred in the early morning hours. The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill. The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack. Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby.
Officials identified the driver as 42-year-old Samsud Din Jabbar. Following the attack, he was shot by police. The FBI is investigating it as an act of terrorism. And a man whose friend was one of those killed in New Orleans early New Year's Day describes the chaos after the driver rammed into the crowd.
Like around 3:15, everybody's just chilling, we having a good time, music playing and all that. A truck hits the corner and comes barreling through people, throwing people like a movie scene, like real life, throwing people into the air, they falling under the car, all that. And a good friend of mine actually passed away from getting hit by it, but the aftermath was really what got me. Like bodies all up and down the street, everybody screaming and hollering. You look down, you see somebody doing CPR, you look around, people crying on the floor, like brains matter all over the ground. And yeah, it really hurt me to see like one of my closest friends like that.
In a separate incident, one person is dead and 7 others suffered minor injuries following an explosion outside of President-elect Donald Trump's Las Vegas hotel early Wednesday. Firework mortars, and camp fuel canisters were found stuffed into the back of the Tesla Cybertruck, which caused the vehicle to blow up. The deceased has been identified as Matthew Levelsberger, an active duty U.S. Army Green Beret. The FBI is investigating whether the explosion is tied to terrorism, and officials noted the implications of the Tesla vehicle and the hotel's namesake. The Correctional Service of Canada says an inmate has escaped the Saskatchewan Penitentiary in Prince Albert. It says staff members discovered 29-year-old Glenn Frederick Richard Helkick was missing during the 9:30 p.m. count on New Year's Eve. The service contacted the RCMP's Prince Albert detachment, and a warrant for the man's arrest has been issued. Anyone with information on his whereabouts is asked to contact police. He was serving a sentence of 2 years and 9 months for various offenses, including break and enter and vehicle theft. Close to $2 million worth of cocaine was recently seized at Alberta's Coutts border crossing. On December 30th, Canada Border Services officers reported that they, along with RCMP and other agencies, seized 189 kilograms of coke following a secondary examination of a commercial truck seeking entry on November the 13th. Elections Alberta has made it official that the NDP's Rob Miyashiro will represent Lethbridge West and Edmonton. Elections Alberta says the voter turnout was 36% compared to 61.5% in the 2023 provincial election. More than 13,000 ballots were cast out of nearly 38,000 eligible electors. Close to 41% voted on Election Day, while 49% voted in advance. 7.7% voted by special ballot and 2.5% voted through mobile voting. A by-election was held December 18th to replace former Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips, who stepped down from her role last July. Lethbridge fire crews from 4 stations responded to a vehicle fire at a commercial building this morning. Firefighters were called just after 7 a.m. to a building on the 2800 block of 26th Avenue South, where a parked vehicle was on fire inside. The flames were quickly extinguished, which prevented the fire from spreading through the building. The damage is estimated at $22,000, and the fire is being investigated. Going into the new year, Lethbridge police have announced 2 separate incidents that have resulted each in deaths, including one where charges have been laid. BCN's Landon Hickok is on Mayor McGrath Drive with more details.
Thanks, Jeanette. I am here near the 1600 block of Mayor McGrath Drive South, where Lethbridge police have found the remains of a 13-year-old boy on December the 26th. Now, currently, his cause of death is unknown. He is scheduled for an autopsy in Calgary, but police assure there is no danger to the public at this time. His identity is currently unreleased, and police expect further updates will be given when the investigation is closed. Now, further up north on Mayor McGrath Drive, Lethbridge police is also investigating a homicide at a nearby hotel on the 2200 block of 7th Avenue South. On December the 28th, Lethbridge police showed up to the motel where they found a body in a motel room that they deemed as suspicious. Now, over the course of the investigation, 2 subjects were arrested and charged with first-degree murder in connection with the death of the motel. Police have not released the names or identities of the 2 subjects yet, or the deceased victim. Throughout each investigation, Lethbridge police say that they will release more information when each investigation has concluded. Jeanette?
Thanks so much, Landon. The Salvation Army in Lethbridge surpassed its 2024 Christmas Kettle campaign goal with over $232,000 raised. The campaign extended from November 26th through December the 24th, and it saw kettles set up at 7 key areas across the city and was supported by events like the 55th Annual Coffee and Carols and the nationwide Fill the Kettle Day. The initial goal of the campaign was $200,000. According to the Salvation Army, the funds raised will support programs like Tots, Toys for Tots, that is, plus a food assistance program and other year-round initiatives. Well, according to the City of Lethbridge, property assessment notices were mailed today to all residential and commercial property owners. Anyone signed up for e-notices would have received their assessment notice by email at the email registered to their My City account. If an assessment notice has not been received by January 16th, please call 311 to get a copy or through MyCity at lethbridge.ca/mycity. Canada meets Czechia tonight in the quarterfinals of the World Junior Hockey Championships in Ottawa. It's a rematch of last year's quarterfinal where Czechia eliminated Canada. Tonight's game comes on the heels of a 4-1 loss to the United States on New Year's Eve when Canada took 11 penalties and gave up 3 power play goals.
We've got to play hard, but between the whistles. You know, we got caught a couple times just kind of getting sucked into, some of the stuff after the whistles, and just can't have that.
Yeah, frustrating. We took ourselves out of it with all the penalties. We dominated 5-on-5. So if we stay out of the box, it's probably our game.
Penalties are penalties. You talk all you want in short term. They have to decide. It's an individual thing. It's a character thing. They have to decide. And I think they will. I'm pretty sure they will.
Recapping one of our top stories today, measles making a comeback in 2025 is among the top health concerns for Canada's Chief Public Health Officer. Teresa Tams says she's closely monitoring the virus that was eliminated in this country more than 2 decades ago, but has made an accelerated resurgence in 2024. And residents in Lethbridge faced a lot of big issues in 2024. Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Higgin will join us shortly to discuss a number of hot-button topics, including the plan to save the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center. And hey, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, visit our website anytime to check out a number of our stories and interviews.
Following lengthy discussions and looking over different options, Lethbridge City Council finally came up with a plan to deal with a multi-million-dollar boondoggle that's the Lethbridge and District exhibition in the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Centre. Now, to chat about this and other big stories affecting the folks here in Lethbridge from the past year is Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Hagan, who joins us from City Hall. Blaine, welcome back to BCN.
Thank you so much for having me, Hal.
So Blaine, City Council decided to use both contingency funds along with surplus dollars from the current budget to support the LDE. That means there will be no additional property tax increase outside of the 5.1% already budgeted?
Yes, that's correct. So we use the contingencies and the main reason for using the contingencies and talking to our CFO is contingencies are there for an emergency. And we couldn't think of anything more emergent than this. And so for that reason, we decided to use that rather than increase the taxes from what was already put in place in 2022. So we heard loud and clear from the community that they just couldn't sustain an additional tax increase. And so this is the way that we did it. However, looking forward, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle now because, of course, there's no contingencies available for other emergencies that may come over the wall, and so we need to be able to put dollars back into that fund, and so hopefully that comes with cost savings and efficiencies that will be realized over the next couple of years prior to revisiting this.
Now, Blaine, some people were asking, why not just shut down the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Centre altogether, or maybe sell it off? Your thoughts?
That's a great question, and you know what? If we closed it down and mothballed it, there's still the costs. We still have the loans that are out there. It's the difference isn't as much as what people may think, because if you think about what we would lose. So, for example, we've got an incredible facility there. Let's face it. Anytime you drive by there, it's a beautiful facility. Now, we would not have the Whoop Up Days. We may not have Egg Expo. We may not have the Home and Garden. All these different things, if it was mothballed, these are community events that the community absolutely love. The citizens of Lethbridge enjoy. And so we had to think of what was best. It wasn't the easiest decision because it's something that we didn't realize that we were going to have to work with. When I was first elected as mayor, I had no idea that this would be coming over the wall. And so we've have to pivot and look at ways that we can keep taxes down and yet keep this building open.
Now let's talk about the recent Lethbridge West by-election won by the NDP's Rob Miyashiro. Interesting how the city appears to be split kind of right down the middle here, Blaine. You've got a UCP MLA representing the east side in Nathan Neudorf, who's also our utility and affordability minister. And now Miyashiro will keep the west side orange. It's just bizarre. Like, I've lived in so many cities here in Alberta that are very conservative, but in Lethbridge, that's not the case here.
Yeah, you know what? We knew it was going to be close. And I mean, anyone you talk to knew that this was going to be a close by-election. And by-elections, of course, with voter turnout being a little less than in a regular election, it was too close to call. And so I've had the opportunity of working with both Rob Miyashiro and with John Middleton Hope and over council, and both credible candidates. And it is what it is, I guess, Al, is I guess the way we'll put it, but it is divided. Our community is, with it being a West being NDP and with East being conservative. But, we move forward. We'll work with anyone. And that's the most important thing is it's working with whoever is our MLA, and that's of extreme importance.
Now, it was great to see cardiologist Dr. Saya Zilke presented with the key to the city and recognition of her tireless efforts to improve and advance cardiac care here in Southern Alberta. Blaine, are you working with the province to bring in more specialists to our city, including even more cardiologists and obstetricians?
Thank you so much for that question, Hal. It is a focus of ours, and we understand that it's the mandate of the province for doctors. However, these doctors live within our community. So we want to make sure that it's very welcoming for them and their families. And so over the past month and a half, I've had the opportunity of visiting other rural communities. So we've been up to Coaldale, to Tabor, the county, and as just in Raymond here a couple nights ago, asking for their support as we continue our advocacy work with the provincial government on bringing in specialty doctors. Doesn't mean that we've stopped with family doctors. It's just that specialty services are needed within our community as well. We have the ongoing work that we're doing with family medicine and family doctors. However, moving forward, specialty services. You brought up Dr. Zielke. Cardiologist is something that we're needing, and it was the first key to the city that I was able to present, and that was to Dr. Zielke. And I couldn't have been happier with that. She came to Lethbridge 11 years ago, and there was no cardiologist. She came down on a little visit to see what she thought of Lethbridge, and she remained here, and she has built that program up in Southern Alberta to 8 cardiologists as of next year. And so when you have the cath lab announcement, we have the cardiologists here to make that happen. That is something that's huge. I couldn't be happier. I sit on I co-chair a committee with Dr. Zielke, and it's absolutely amazing the work that she does. She is her story. Sometimes you need to have a listen of how she got here to Canada and what she has done to make Lethbridge, and not just that, the surrounding area, a better place to live. She's absolutely an outstanding individual.
Let's talk a bit more about the physician shortage here in our city. It is obviously a provincial issue. Many people still don't have a family doctor here, but there is support for the University of Lethbridge's Rural Medical Training School, which will hopefully, see more doctors training here soon over the next 7 to 10 years?
Absolutely. It's a super exciting thing. They'll start next year. First intakes of students next year at the rural medical facility there at the university. And stats show that if you study within an area, the chances of you staying in that area are 80 to 90%, and it depends on the stat, but they're very high, that you're going to remain within that community. So to us, that is going to do some incredible work for recruitment of doctors through that through the university and that program that they're offering.
Now, Blaine, there was a request for medical supervisors, which is the addition of 4 FTE positions for the purposes of maintaining the longevity of EMS services within the fire and EMS department here in Lethbridge. In your opinion, how will those medical supervisors really help us here?
That's work. It was presented in a very high level. The intricacies and how that is going to happen moving forward is something that we're still working through all of those details. And so I think we've got this contract in place, and for Lethbridge Emergency Services, we want to support them in their work. And so when they bring this forward, we want to make sure that we're supporting their work, and this is part of that path to a future of a stronger Lethbridge and fire and emergency services.
Now, Blaine, as a resident of Lethbridge myself, I'll be saving a few extra bucks per month on my recycling bill, around $9. I'm appreciative of that with the recent announcement. That has something to do with council approving a recommendation on extended producer responsibility. Can you really explain how that works?
Well, you know what? As a very high level, and I always like to see that reduction, of course, on any of our utility bill, and it's something that is, I know Minister Neudorfer is working hard on trying to reduce it even more. But it's something where the costs are going to be put on to the manufacturer, for example. So it's not to the end user. So for that reason, we're going to realize some cost savings through our recycling, and that is being passed on to the community. And so it's great to be able to see. I again love to see a reduction in my utility bill. Look forward to more. But it's a great start. The flip side to that is there's going to be some businesses that will bear that cost, and it's going to be manufacturers that will bear that cost. But as on your utility bill, you're going to realize the cost savings.
Now, Council voted unanimously to support a recommendation from the Safety and Social Committee to support the Lethbridge Police Service Master Plan. Blaine, would that include the potential of maybe more boots on the ground here in our city, or more police dealing with those who are stunting and racing around in our city?
It's a great question, Hal. And you know what? It's being a member of the police commission and now working with the community and the chief. This is something that is really exciting. This master plan, and the reason it is because right now we will be, as of next year, at a full staff complement within our police service, something that hasn't happened for, I'm going to say, decades, to be at the level of full complement. And so the chief is very happy with that. And I said, don't slow down, keep your work moving forward, keep hiring, retention, all of that, but we're going to have a lot more boots on the ground. And so, it's something that we've, going back a few years ago where we restored that police budget, we're able to get those officers that were needed within our community. And now I couldn't be happier that we're going to be at a full staff complement with the Lethbridge Police Service.
Yeah, years ago when you and I talked about the $1 million taken out of the police budget, so that and more was put back in?
Absolutely. So moving forward, we need to understand that, when we look at taxation, a majority of our taxation goes towards emergency services. So if it's police or fire, but I've heard loud and clear from the community, this is something they support. So taxation is something that it's part of that 5.1% tax increase, but it's something that is going to be realized with community safety. You've seen the multiple different drug busts that we've had within Lethbridge. Now, what we need to do, Hal, and you and I both know this, there needs to be a change at other levels of government, because when you have our officers in and they're arresting someone for fentanyl and distributing fentanyl throughout our community and killing those souls within Lethbridge, they'll arrest them and they're out in 10, 50 minutes later. We need to make sure that the community understands that this is not the work of the police. Our police are doing their job. This is other levels of government and judges that are allowing these folks back onto the streets. We need to fix bail reform. That has to be done, because our officers are dealing with 2-3 times in a day, are rearresting the same individuals for work that is doing an incredible disservice in our community. If it's peddling these drugs throughout our streets or doing things like that, this is something we need to have fixed. But that's at another level of government.
Yeah, bail reform, definitely a contentious issue, you bet. Blaine, let's talk about the province's decision to do away with most photo radar. Transport Minister Devin Tereshan says, he mentioned it on BCN, it'll mainly be used in schools, playgrounds, and construction zones. But what about the financial hit the city will take? Also, Police Chief Shaheen Medizadeh was not impressed with Minister Tereshan's announcement, saying we'll see even more speeders here in the city.
The hit is, we need to understand that I've always told folks that talk to me about, getting a photo radar or something. And I said, the easiest way to not get a ticket is to not speed. So there is this shift, and I understand the frustration that some folks have. But if you obey the law, you're not going to get a speeding ticket. And I'm sorry, a lot of people are going to not be very happy with me on that. But they've pivoted now, and they're putting it into areas that school zones and stuff. And I've seen out there in social media, and other folks have reached out like, this is crazy. I can't believe. I'll tell you what, completely in support of that. We need to make sure that there's safety, especially in those zones. So pivoting from some of the other areas to school zones, I'm very happy with. I think that's important to be able to protect our youth and those schools and some of the parks and stuff like that where speeding and stuff goes on. So, you know what? It's a really touchy subject, but I think in the long run, public safety moving to be a safer, around the parks and schools is of importance.
Preparations are underway for the next municipal election coming up in 2025. I believe the big day is October the 20th of next year. Now, you were first elected to council as a councillor way back in 2013, Blaine, and became mayor in 2021. So in your opinion, over the last 11 years, how much have things really changed?
You know what? As you and I both know, Hal, and I'm sure the community knows, sometimes government moves a lot slower than me as a private business owner, as I'm still a business owner within the community. You make decisions, they're done a lot quicker than government, because when you're dealing with taxpayers' dollars, you want to make sure that you're crossing every T, dotting every I, and making sure that those dollars are going to the right reason. So things take a lot longer. As I've seen through being a councillor and into being a mayor, I'm seeing some of the things from my first and second term as a councillor being realized now as mayor. And so, I look forward to how things move forward. Can we speed up this process? It's a tough one, but I'll tell you what, I see how culturally diverse our community is. I see that we always have incredible events, but we always have challenges. It's working through those challenges with my colleagues what is extremely important. And we do have a council that is, we're very diverse, and we're never or very rarely a 9-0 vote. However, we're very respectful, and it's something I've noticed a change since I became mayor on council is a respect that we have for one another. We may not always agree, but we respect one another, and what each council member is bringing on behalf of those that they've spoke with.
Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Hagan, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal. Appreciate it.
We all get concerned about violent crime as well as property crime. The negative impact on society and individual lives is significant. As Canadians, we usually view our country as being much safer than our neighbors to the south, but a new study sheds some surprising light on that assumption. Today's guest is Dr. Livio De Matteo. He is a senior fellow at the Fraser Institute and professor of economics at Lakehead University in Thunder Bay, Ontario. And he's also the author of the study comparing recent crime trends in Canada and the U.S. Livio, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, pleasure to be here, Jeanette.
Wonderful. Okay, first off, maybe give us a big picture view of violent crime rates in our two nations. If we look back over the last number of decades, has it been increasing or decreasing?
Certainly. Well, overall, crime is actually lower now than it was 20 or 30 years ago based on rates per 100,000 population. And it's also been declining in both countries, in both Canada and the United States. Where the difference is since 2014, there's actually been a rebound. So even though rates, today are lower than they were 20 or 30 years ago, compared to where we were, 7 or 8 years ago, the rates are higher. And it's pretty much across the board. Homicides, for example, in 2014 in Canada were about 1.5 homicides per 100,000 people. That's gone up to 2.3 by the end of the study period in this report. That's a 53% increase. In the United States, which has always had a higher homicide rate than Canada, it's gone from 3.9 to 5.8, which is a 49% increase. Then if you start to look at violent crime, historically, Canada has always had a lower violent crime rate than the United States. But again, since 2014, our violent crime has increased faster than the United States. So we've gone from 302 violent crimes per 100,000 in 2014 to 434. That's a 44% increase. The US has also increased from 362 to 381 per 100,000, but that's only about 5%. So we have actually, as of 2022, surpassed the U.S. violent crime rate by about 14%. We're 14% higher, which is a remarkable development given that historically we've always had lower crime rates. Then when you come to property crime historically in Canada has been slightly higher than the U.S. However, since 2014, we've gone from about 2,328 crimes per 100,000 to 2,491. That's a 7% increase. However, in the United States, property crime rates have actually decreased over that same period, have gone from 2,574 to 1,954. So they've actually experienced a slight decrease, but our property crime rate is at present higher than that in the United States also.
That's crazy. So it's like you're finding now that the rates of both violent crime and property crime have been increasing in Canada and now is surpassing comparable crime rates in the U.S. That's really hard to believe. So, how exactly are we defining violent crime? What falls into this category?
Well, violent crime is basically, robberies, murders, assault with a weapon. So the Canadian definition actually includes something called assault level 1, in which there is not serious injury in the assault and there is no weapon, but that has been omitted because in the United States, that definition actually is not considered, strictly speaking, a violent crime. So if you include the Canadian definition of violent crime, it's actually always been much higher than the American one. So in a sense, it's been reduced to sort of better match the American definition of violent crime, in which case historically we've been below them, but now even with that definition, we've actually surpassed them.
Okay, and likewise, what is included in property crimes?
Thefts, burglary, motor vehicle theft, those types of incidents. That actually is more comparable and more relatable to the U.S. definition than was the original violent crime one.
And I would assume that the rates of violent crime and property crime are significantly higher in urban centers.
This part of the report did not actually look at that breakdown. Um, that is actually, the report's actually coming out in three parts. The first part was a general national level overview. The next release will actually be comparing Canadian CMAs to each other, and then also to the American equivalent, which are their MSAs or metropolitan statistical areas. However, what is interesting, excuse me, in terms of crime rate, some rural crime rates actually tend to be higher than urban ones, believe it or not. And there's also an east-west gradient in which crime rates in general in Canada tend to be lower the further east you go, and they tend to rise as you move further out west.
So, why are violent crimes increasing that drastically here in Canada while the US has only experienced a slight increase? What's driving that increase in Canada?
Well, that's a very good question, and the report doesn't actually look into the determinants of crime or what might be driving it. Historically, crime is related to demographics, for example. Younger populations tend to have higher crime rates. And so as populations have aged, it's probably not a surprise that crime rates have also declined over time. So the question is, what has happened to our demographics since, say, 2014, 2015? They have gotten slightly younger. There has been population growth. So that could be a factor. These are police-reported crime rates, and perhaps the police are simply catching more criminals and more crimes are being reported. That is also a possibility. But the report doesn't really go into the details as to what could be driving those kinds of results.
And I think you mentioned there that like homicides are higher in the US, but murders are on the rise in Canada, right? So what kind of an increase are we seeing in our homicide rate? And do we have any indications of what's causing that rate to go up?
Well, I don't have indications on the causes, but you look at Canadian homicide rates, they've always been, substantially lower than the US rate. I mean, in 2000, we were at 1.8 homicides per 100,000. That's declined by about 2014, 2015 to 1.5. And that's a historical trend that had been going on for quite a few decades. However, since then, the homicide rate has been going up. And so it went up from 1.5 to 2.3 by 2022, between 2014 and 2022. And, that's a substantial increase.
And then, of course, with property crimes decreasing in the US, what can we learn from what the Americans are doing? Do we know what they're doing to have this decrease?
I couldn't answer that for you. I would have to look at to see what the differences are in either policing numbers or even the types of strategies used for policing and crime, et cetera, as well as other, social type determinants that, might be driving crime rates. I mean, income growth has been faster in the US over the last decade than it has been in Canada. In a sense, our per capita GDP has been stagnating, and perhaps that is having an impact on people's ability to get ahead, and perhaps that's affecting them. In the U.S., their GDP has been growing quite robustly, so wages, etc. So that may be a factor.
It would be an interesting, sociological study, I guess, or economic study, really, to see if the inflation rates and just the economy itself has made a difference on that. Where do you see this Canadian crime trend going over the next decade?
Well, again, I haven't been doing a forecast, but based on the last few years, it looks like the trend will be up at least for the foreseeable future. But where it goes a decade from now, I mean, if in 2010 you'd asked me to look ahead, I would tell you crime rates would continue dropping, and they did up until about 2014, 2015. So I would imagine that they'll probably continue rising for the foreseeable future in the short term. What happens in the long term is anybody's guess.
And Livio, any thoughts on what options are available to our various levels of government to put into action to reverse these trends?
Well, I mean, there's usually two basic approaches. There's the sort of social spending approach to address the social determinants of crime. And then, of course, there's direct spending on policing. And I mean, there's been some debate in the recent past over whether one should be favored over the other. I would argue you would probably have to do both. I think those are complementary approaches, mainly because addressing the social determinants of crime is something where success emerges only in the longer term. It can take quite a few years before increases in social spending on housing or employment opportunities, education, etc., translate into reduced crime rates. In the short term, there's still crime, and so you also are going to have to spend resources on policing and those types of expenditures. So the two, in a sense, are complementary rather than substitutes, as they've often been portrayed in the past.
What's next for you for this study? What's part two of this? Are you going to dive more deeply into sort of geographical regions or the regions or the reasons, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Mainly, it'll still be a comparison of the numbers. So the report is actually going to be, the study is going to be released in 3 phases. The first phase was the overview of national rates. The next phase is going to be looking at Canadian cities, essentially, the CMAs, Census Metropolitan Areas. So these are jurisdictions with 100,000 people or more. And it's going to sort of compare them with each other. And it's also going to look at the American counterparts, so to speak, the Metropolitan Statistical Areas, or MSAs. And it's going to compare them with each other. And then the Canadian and the American cities are going to be compared jointly to see how Canadian cities rank with the American one. So that'll be the second phase of the report. And I don't have a date. It'll be sometime early in the new year. I don't have a date for that yet. Then after that, there'll be a regional comparison. So we'll be looking at, for example, British Columbia with adjacent states, Alberta, Saskatchewan with adjacent states underneath, Ontario and the U.S. Midwest, the Atlantic provinces in New England. And so we'll be continuing the comparison. But again, it's just a comparison of the numbers. We aren't going to be addressing, at least I'm not going to be addressing the determinants that might be affecting those rates.
Okay, no, that's interesting. But even that sounds very comprehensive, and it sounds like it will paint a much broader picture and kind of put in some of those puzzle pieces a little bit more to answer some of those questions for sure. But thanks so much for being with us today, Livio. Appreciate having you on.
My pleasure, Jeanette. Have a great day.
You as well. Dr. Livio Di Matteo is a senior fellow at the Fraser Institute and professor of economics at Lakehead University, and the author of the study comparing recent crime trends in Canada and the United States.
One of the biggest ongoing concerns for many Canadians is having a reliable and affordable power supply. Now, one potential solution that's getting a lot of attention around the world is hydrogen. Now, to chat about this in more detail is Nathan Neudorf, Alberta's Minister of Affordability and Utilities, joining us from Calgary. Welcome back to BCN, Nathan.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Al.
You bet. Now, first of all, can you share with our viewers a little bit about hydrogen, where it's found, and how it's produced?
Well, there's lots of avenues for hydrogen to be extracted from the atmosphere or different elements. In Alberta, our predominant method is through natural gas, which we have nearly 300 years of supply. So, but the technology in this area just continues to develop and evolve all over the place. We're really excited about its potential. We're working through some of the cost implications and transportation challenges, but it is a growing industry expected to be over $11 trillion worldwide. And Alberta is definitely a leader in its production and development.
So Nathan, what kinds of things can we use hydrogen fuel for? Can we use it to power vehicles, maybe use it in our homes or commercially?
All of the above. So right now, one of our railways, CP Rail, has a hydrogen locomotive that they've been developing for a little over a year and utilizing. That's a great advancement. The government of Alberta has actually signed an agreement to use some hydrogen cars. There's a fueling station at the airport in Edmonton, so it's great for that. We're looking at some new legislation and regulation to allow it to be blended for household use. And of course, it could be utilized for burning to create electricity with fewer emissions than even natural gas. So lots of application for this space and continually developing. We're really excited about its potential.
How long would it actually take to fill up a hydrogen vehicle?
Actually, I don't know that. I would imagine somewhere between a regular gas vehicle and less than an electric vehicle. So we're again continually advancing the technology. These things are a little bit of a moving target right now, but the future is very, very bright.
How long do you think it'll actually take to set up the infrastructure? And one of the concerns about the EVs is we don't have the infrastructure right now in many parts of the country. So what about when it comes to hydrogen? How long would that take?
Again, that's an ongoing conversation. If we can build it on the back of our existing natural gas pipeline, which is extensive, then that timeline's really cut down in cost and time. If we have to build a new hydrogen, that's a different exploration. Again, technology is continuing to develop and advance. And these are the questions that we're seeking to work with industry to find the best, lowest cost solution for all Albertans.
So Nathan, why do you believe that our province is in a good position to become a global leader when it comes to hydrogen production?
Because we have so much technology from our oil and gas sector. They are global leaders already. And Alberta's production of hydrogen is over 2 million cubic tons per year already. The entire United States is just over 10 million. So we're a huge player globally. We have the technology, we have the resources, we continue to advance and stay at the forefront of a tremendously exciting new technology and growth industry.
Now, hydrogen obviously is a gas. How would you calm the fears of some of our viewers thinking, well, is this dangerous, working with hydrogen?
Of course, there's many of us older folks who remember the Hindenburg and some of those kind of things. Technology continues to advance. The temperature, as I understand it, the temperature of shipping, if it's very, very cold, much more stable, all of those kind of things. We continue to work with industry to make sure that we have the best, safest, lowest cost technology to make sure that these issues aren't feared or aren't dangerous to everybody where they're utilized.
Now, you touched a little bit earlier on some of the infrastructure here, Nathan. What kind of a timeline are you envisioning to maybe see proper infrastructure for fueling stations to be put into place to make hydrogen vehicles more practical?
I think that's continually evolving. It is very difficult to put a specific timeline because of the technological advancements. There's some already, there's many more proposed, but we have a private market and a private industry that provides that. So they're moving very, very quickly. And I think within the next few years, we'll just see that accelerate. So rather than put a specific date on it, we just know that it is advancing very rapidly.
And what about when it comes to the environment? How green is hydrogen fuel? To what degree does it really lower emissions?
There's many different colors. There's gray hydrogen, green hydrogen. Blue hydrogen is most specifically linked to natural gas, which is what we have. Green hydrogen, I think, would generally be seen as the most clean. We're continuing to work on that technology. There's actual chemical processes for converting natural gas to hydrogen to electricity, which don't require combustion. So in that aspect, even natural gas fuel source can be a green hydrogen, depending on the process. We're excited about all the technology and all the application for it. It's cleaner because it has fewer particles. And if you do a chemical process rather than combustion, you're not burning anything and you're not even creating that emission. So we can capture the pure carbon dioxide molecule. Lots of technology, lots of science. We're really excited about the potential and the leadership that our private industry has shown.
So you feel that Alberta can become a global leader when it comes to hydrogen. Nathan, how much demand is there really around the world for hydrogen fuel at this point in time?
Well, it's continually growing. Like I said earlier, it's expected to be over an $11 trillion market. We have a hydrogen roadmap. We have a hydrogen center for excellence. And we have funded over 100 individual projects to the tune of over hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure that we are advancing this and we remain a global leader as it's adopted more and more worldwide.
Are there certain countries that have come knocking on Alberta's door looking for hydrogen?
Lots in Europe, lots in the Asian market, Japan, and South Korea, pardon me. The United States is a great trading partner. All around the world, they're coming here. We have some very exciting projects with Linde and with Dow Chemicals, lots more on the go. we are on the world stage, certainly.
As you know, I mean, you're from this region here in southwestern Alberta. We're all about agriculture here. So what role do you envision hydrogen playing in the agricultural sector? How it could be a real game changer for our farmers and ranchers?
Certainly, our farmers and ranchers have to get their product to market, whether that's by road or rail. Hydrogen can be a fuel source to advance that with lower emissions. And who knows, one day we may even have tractors and combines that run on hydrogen fuel, again, lower emitting, but still with the power that they need to function their equipment. It's just exciting to be part of it, and very proud that Alberta is a global leader in all of these aspects.
Now, you are the Affordability and Utilities Minister. I want to talk to you about my last electric bill. Dude, it's not coming down. Let's talk about the electricity grid. And you say the province is doing more to make electricity more affordable for Albertans, but I didn't see it in my last bill. Talk to me.
Well, when was the last time you talked to your competitive retailer on what program you're on? What package do you have? I'll tell you, my last bill in Edmonton went down by 5 times. I was $165 for July. I was $33 for August. So if you are looking at your rates, the competitive retailers are doing a great amount of work. The average price for the last 4 months in Alberta has been about 2 cents a kilowatt. In our default rate, the RRO, which is soon to be the R-roller, the rate of last resort, is down over 60% from last year alone. So I encourage you to go contact your provider and see what competitive markets you can find. The lower rates are there, and we're doing a lot more work this fall and into the new year to continue to provide that low cost and stable pricing for Albertans everywhere.
You know what? Yeah, I'm with ATCO right now, and I have to talk to them about the 12 cents per kilowatt hour that they're charging me right now.
I think you should. I think that's there's competitive rates much lower than that. I suspect you might be on that RRO rate. We'll continue to work with them on that, but check out what rate you're on. There's lots of options for you.
Now, the Alberta government just introduced something called the rate of last resort for consumers. Can you explain how that works?
Again, that is the new form of what was previously the RRO, the regulated rate option. The new name is rate of last resort.
Okay.
We are providing the ability for retailers, instead of just buying 3 months and it being more of a spot price, they can buy out to 2 years, really stabilizing their what they're purchasing, and then providing to their customers a stable long-term rate. We're going through the final negotiations right now to provide that. We are anticipating that early in the new year, that'll be a rate able for anyone who hasn't gone out and found a competitive retail rate. It's kind of the default. So when you move to Alberta and you just need electricity right away, that's what the rate you're put on. But you have the option to go out to a competitive retailer of your choosing and find the rates that suits you best. We're doing this for everyone across Alberta so they can get a stable, reliable source of electricity if they haven't either qualified for credit or if they haven't had a chance to look at the competitive market.
So how much of an increase has Alberta seen in more electricity production coming on stream?
We've seen a tremendous amount this last year, over 6,000 megawatts by the end of this year from last year. So people remember maybe January 13th or some other challenges this spring. We've had over 3,000 megawatts of dispatchable natural gas generation come online, and many more wind and solar projects come online as well. This will provide more stability, a more balanced and broad-based generation supply. We continue to do work on that, and many more thousands are being constructed right now, including some battery storage, which helps stabilize some of that fast frequency response. I'm getting a bit technical, but our system is becoming more and more balanced with more and more stable pricing, and that's a good end result for consumers.
So Nathan, in the grand scheme of things, let's talk about green energy projects such as wind and solar. What percentage do they actually contribute to the overall electricity grid?
Well, due to their intermittent nature, it can really be dependent on the weather. We've seen a huge amount being built. This summer, we've probably had the most contributions ever in Alberta's history of wind and solar, and that's what's partially responsible for driving those prices down. Now we're moving towards a firming or a stabilizing of that supply, so it's not so intermittent based on the weather. Whether that means they have a contract with a peaker plant that provides generation with natural gas, or whether they provide it through an energy storage either electric battery storage or hydro battery storage to stabilize that. We're seeing that firming capacity come online as well, which overall provides a stabilizing of our structure and pricing and a more reliable provision of it to the grid and the market. These are all good outcomes for consumers.
What about nuclear energy and the potential of building some of these modular reactors to really help offset the grid?
We continue to pursue that. We are in the middle of developing a regulatory framework so we could have them here. We've never had that before, but we watch the market globally. There are a lot of cost concerns with nuclear, as well as what do you do with the fuel once it's spent. We are working on a regulatory framework to answer all of those questions. And then it becomes about timing and implementation within our market. What makes the most sense for Alberta and where? People need to remember as well that we are an energy-only market and a free market. That means generators pay for that investment cost, not ratepayers. Ratepayers pay for the product, and they only pay for the energy that's provided. We're trying to make sure that we retain those values so that we provide the best, lowest cost, cleanest electricity to those ratepayers, and they have choice. So nuclear is definitely a part of the future of Alberta. We continue to take steps toward that, but we don't want to rush it. When you rush into things, you end up paying more, and we continue to develop our framework to make sure that it is safe, secure, and as low cost as possible.
Nathan Neudorf is Alberta's Minister of Affordability and Utilities. Thanks so much for joining us today from Calgary.
You bet. Thanks a lot, Hal. Really appreciate the time with you.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.